Bless me, Father. Is it on? God doesn't like wasting batteries. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It is 53 years since my last confession, Father. And when are you going to confess, Father? God has spoken. Good afternoon, my queer brethren and their allies. My name is Tim McKew. Today I will share some early highlights of my queer life on the world stage. I am a gay elder. Let's call me a gelder. I'm a queer performing artist who was born in 1955 into an Irish-Italian Catholic family. My parents were Pat and Pat, Patrick and Patricia McKew. I was the youngest of 5 children and by far the most talented and precocious. I was brought up in a working class family in Melbourne, Port Melbourne. My father was a wharfie and an SB bookie. My mother was also an SB bookie. And we all went to the best Catholic schools on the back of the GGs. When I was born, I virtually came out singing, but the rest of my siblings are tone deaf. This gift came from my mother's Italian side of the family. My great-uncle Mario Del Madre was an opera singer, and mother had a beautiful voice, but was never encouraged by her parents. Good Catholic girls don't go on stage, said Grandpa. Mother entered me into many talent quests. All her dreams came true when I won my heat on Channel 7's musical variety show, Brian and the Juniors. They said to Mother, he has the voice of an angel. We'd like him to join the show. My mother was in raptures. I was on that TV show for 4 years, from 1965 to 69, singing with Jamie Redfern, Deborah Byrne and others. It was a groundbreaking experience for me. Puberty had set in and my voice started to drop. I grew a Frida Kahlo moustache and the lass was asked to leave the show. Mother was devastated. It was time to concentrate on my studies and as puberty would have it, on boys. I saw in print in the Nation Review a new word, gay, for boys who like boys. It was my first epiphany. I never came out because I've never been in. Being brought up in show business encouraged my campness from a young age. In 1971, I played Caiaphas in the Dennis Potter play, The Son of Man, for the State Catholic Drama Competition, and it was my matriculation year. I fell in love with David Kelly, a flaxen-haired blonde boy in my class at the Christian Brothers Secondary School, St. Joseph's, North Melbourne. One of the brothers discovered love poems I'd written about David in my desk. All hell broke loose. My parents were called in and Machiavellian machinations were in motion behind closed doors. I was sent to a Catholic psychiatrist priest and under the advice of the Catholic Church and psychiatric authorities, I was given shock treatment, a criminal act, in the hope of rewiring my 17-year-old gay brain. Thankfully, they did not succeed. The die was set. I knew I had to fight for my very survival, for my young gay identity. And within a few short years, I returned the favour and gave society and church shock treatment in the form of anarchic cabaret. The gay cabaret activist was born. I joined the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar in '73, playing an apostle and an exemplary leper. I always played my I almost stopped the show one night by appearing on stage in drag as one of the apostles' wives. Well, they did have drag queens in Jesus' day, Andrew Lloyd Webber. When I left, Marsha Hines said, "Tim, you're outrageous. You should get your own show." It was also the year I joined Gay Liberation at Melbourne University. I'll always remember Gay Pride Week and the march in September. People were coming out of the closets, ripping the doors off actually. We were demanding social change and equality, an end to the demonisation of homosexuals in society, in the workplace and in the church and so on, and for the decriminalisation of homosexuality. We were decriminalised in Victoria sometime later. After a short stint at Melbourne State College in '74, I teamed up with playwright Louis Nara and pianist Sarah Dion, singing their dark, gritty, Brechtian-style compositions, with me as their Lottie Lenya in a big red dress and a Jean Genet pout. These shows were performed at the birthplace of contemporary Australian comedy and cabaret, Melbourne's Flying Trapeze Cafe in Fitzroy. I was still living at home in Garden City, Port Melbourne. My mother had been a model at Le Louvre in Collins Street and had an exceptional 1940s wardrobe of haute couture. I discovered this treasure trove and would often put on her 40 suits and fox fur, looking like Joan Crawford and Humoresque. And I would take the bus into town to the Woolshed Bar, frequented by twinks, crims and white-collar gays. It was like a set out of a William Burroughs novel. It was fabulous. My mother caught me one afternoon and was horrified. "Take that off, it's mine. You'll be put in jail for masquerading as a woman." "No, Mum, I'm going out as you." My father followed me in one day saying, "Get out of here, these are all pufters." "Well, Dad, you better go unless you are one." I teamed up with my then lover David Evans. He became my piano accompanist. I rarely performed in gay venues, as my show wasn't a drag show as such. I always sang live with musicians. My work was in the 1920s, 30s German cabaret tradition of the Weimar Republic, sometimes confronting with its political, social satire and pathos. Though we did perform at numerous gay dances at colleges and universities during this period, including Melbourne University, La Trobe University, RMIT and Paran Tech. We were breaking new ground, creating contemporary queer cabaret in parochial 70s Australia. I moved into Gainsborough House to Stephen Hill, a Victorian mansion in Port Melbourne. It was an alternative household attracting many countercultural people, artists, performers, photographers, filmmakers, musicians, and many friends from the LGBTIQ+ circles, including my dear departed friend and sometimes lover, Gordon Doak, who started the gay rap group in Melbourne. Nick Cave would visit, Jenny Bannister, William Mora, Howard Arkley, why even the band Blondie popped in for a cuppa. These were heady days. Apart from the new breed of theatre restaurants in Melbourne, such as the Flying Trapeze, Foibles, The Last Laugh and university campuses, I presented many shows in art galleries such as Paraphernalia in Collins Street. Run by Paul Craft, where I performed lunchtime queer cabaret in the gallery window, looking onto Collins Street, dressed as a Turak matron, Magda Gabonchi Gavot, who sings and rails against the Christian churches and their religious prejudice, homophobia and hypocrisy, and where she lampoons the dominant paradigm, the socially conservative right, the moral crusaders such as Fred Nile, Mary Whitehouse, and Anita Bryant. Fred Nile had brought Mary Whitehouse out to Australia on tour, and Magda sings her lament. Ave Maria Whitehouse, Ave Maria Whitehouse, straight from the divine lighthouse. Ave Maria Whitehouse, she is so clever, craving for leather. Ave Maria Whitehouse, don't Bible bash me to death. Queer cabaret in the middle of the CBD, in the middle of the day in 1978? Well, I never. Well, actually, I did. I always believed in taking my shows to the public square, to the coalface, where it is needed. Little martini. Oh yes, it's not gin, it's water. Punk is a verb, never a noun. In '78, the punk scene adopted me as one of their own because of my anarchic and often rebellious material. Though I didn't label myself as punk, for I don't believe in labels, except for Chanel. One can be both anarchic and glamorous. Let's call it glammicky. There was a crossover in the alternative gay scene and emerging punk counterculture at that time. Our home base was the legendary Seaview Ballroom on Fitzroy Street, just a couple of blocks away, run by Dolores San Miguel. I supported such bands as The Chosen Few, The Dots, and Nick Cave and the Boys Next Door, and also performed at Laurie Richards' Tiger Lounge in Richmond. Sexuality was very fluid in the culture of rebellion. I was involved with other events, including Rock for the Dole, an anti-establishment punk bash on the banks of the Yarra, an anti-Australia day do, with the lineup featuring Jab and Radio Birdman. Fitzroy Street, St Kilda, was the stage for much of my early seminal work. For the following year, just across the street, I launched my watershed shows at Talano Galleries entitled Come Down With Us, for performance art tableaus under the gallery baton of William Mora. These social political satires looked at power and the abuse of power, with Cleopatra and Hitler, suburban neuroses with Dada Duck and Brickman, Harold Holt and political mythologies and mythologies of the sea, and my all-time favourite, my piece lampooning the Catholic Church. They do the bash, they do the Bible bash, the Bible bash. It was an instant smash, they do the bash. And then they take your cash, they do the bash. They do the Bible bash. I was watching TV news late one night when my eyes beheld a dreadful sight. It was all about religion in the USA, and Australia true to form is going all the way. They do the bash. They do the Bible bash, the Bible bash. It was an instant smash, they do the bash. Then they take your cash, they do the bash. They do the Bible bash. Get your racket off my balls, Margaret Court. You're a hateful homophobe, a nasty sort. Your fundamentalism is based on hate. Start serving love before it's too late. Yes, I think Margaret Court needs a complete transplant of everything. And please, would you change the Margaret Court Arena should not be the Margaret Court Arena. That's right. Anyway, in time, just you wait, Margaret. The musical compositions for these performance art shows were by David Evans, with Henry Vine on violin, hat sculptures by Graham Hare, costumes by Jenny Bannister, photographed by Peter Haffenden, with Deborah Thomas and Vanessa Troy Davies as usherettes. Vanessa Troy was the star of Richard Lowenstein's film Echo Homo. These shows were groundbreaking in the art world and were covered by Rennie Ellis and Henry Talbot, photographers, by Lee Tulloch in Australian Vogue and Kate Legg in Farrago for Melbourne University. We had our final Australian shows at Melbourne's Last Laugh and Sydney's Palms. We took to the skies, heading for London and Europe. It is Christmas '79. We escaped Malcolm Fraser's Australia to arrive in Maggie Thatcher's England. Eek! Living on the Hindenburg, don't know if I'll be back again. I found London to be very depressing, with Thatcher's Paul over Pall Mall. Amazingly, we had our first engagement, only into our second day in London. Jet lagged, we were whisked away through the English countryside to Sussex in a blue Jag. I'll never forget it. We did quite a few shows in London, including West End clubs such as Monkberry's, doing the satiric Harold Holt show, which was covered by English Vogue, and at the famous Blitz Club, Covent Garden, where a young boy George was in situ at my show, pre-fame. It was the post-punk demi-monde of London, and whilst in town, my pianist David Evans and I were invited to play on one of the tracks of the English band King Crimson. Crazy stuff like that happened. We had only just tapped into London's gay political movement of that time, but fully immersed ourselves in those movements of Germany and the Netherlands. In England, Thatcher's government's clause were out for clause 28, making it illegal for local government to condone or support homosexuality. I was 24 years old. The world was changing. It was the beginning of the 80s, and a global gay culture was being born. We finally arrive in Amsterdam, blissful open Amsterdam, that city of canals with its colourful gay bars and cafes. What a relief after the grim old Blighty. We were very warmly welcomed into the gay community of that city. They were passionate, political and optimistic for the future. David and I were booked to perform at one of Amsterdam's first major gay festivals, the Flicker Festival, Faggot Festival. They were reclaiming the word faggot as we now have reclaimed the word queer. This was at the Melkweg, a famous Amsterdam venue still operating today. The event was called Manan Nettoir, an event of post-feminist, post-disco, neo-faggot masculinity. They called us the Gay Kangaroos, a name which we kept. We were also booked to perform at the International Homo Dag 1980. We performed right throughout Holland, as it was called then. The Dutch loved us. The Gay Kangaroos were at every gay festival, the width and breadth of that small country, including Rotterdam, Utrecht, The Hague, and Friesland. We also supported the band Madness at the Paradiso Club in Amsterdam, and were some of the first Australian artists to perform at the Spiegel tent, many years before it came down under. Berlin, Berlin, burlesque and sin. Our success had spread to Germany. We were invited to bring our Australian gay cabaret to the inaugural Gay International All-Stars Festival in Berlin, to this circus tent that seated 3,000 people called the Tempodrome, which was slap dab against the Berlin Wall. I was on cloud 9. The German gay movement was as highly politically mobilized as the Dutch. One cannot forget the atrocities inflicted on Dutch and German homosexuals throughout that hellish World War II, as is well documented. Pre-World War II, during the Weimar Republic, Berlin was one of the most sophisticated and sexually liberated cities in the world. At this Berlin Gay Festival, I remember meeting a couple of German cabaret artists whose fathers had been in the SS, especially powerful for them to be out and proud in the new Germany of that time. I felt it such an honor to be performing in the cabaret genre in Berlin, one of the cities famous for its social political cabaret. The Germans were ecstatic when I appeared on the back of an elephant dressed as a mermaid, singing West of the Wall. We received much love and encores that night. We were the toast of many gay festivals in Germany, playing Hamburg, Cologne, Bremen, Bremerhaven, Dusseldorf, and Buxtehude, where we performed at the very first Greens Party Festival on the outskirts of Hamburg. The Greens Party and its ideology originated in Germany, you know. We departed Germany playing Berlin's punk alternative music venue, Excess. It was packed, and we did 2 final nights in the fatherland. On the first night, Nina Hagen was there, and we jammed together, which was wunderbar. Alas, no photos. Scheiße. Auf Wiedersehen, Deutschland. We travelled back across the herring pond to the Antipodes. It was sad to leave our German and Dutch friends, and it was such a culture shock returning home to Melbourne after touring Europe. My work was often still not understood here at that time. You see, people couldn't pigeonhole me, categorize me. Is it art? Is it cabaret? Is it jazz? Oh, my poor darlings, I'm all the above and then some. I recall on one occasion, here in the Dark Ages, they wouldn't let me on stage. You're too political, too weird, too dark. Oh, I do love a good tutu. But my devoted cult following would constantly reassure me, it's not you, Tim, it's them. Oh, what a relief. And my often called trailblazing performance art cabarets I did 40 years ago, people are now doing today. I'm so pleased they caught up with me. This tall poppy is now a robust pansy, but never a shrinking violet. Ayatollah many times not to suck on fruit. Ayatollah many times get back to Beirut. In '82, I was awarded an Australia Council grant from the Theatre Board to write and stage the satirical musical An Eye for an Eye, an exploration of vision, both physical and metaphysical. My characters ranged from Ayatollah Khomeini to Yoko Ono, from Oedipus Rex to Helen Keller. The 80s were also a challenging decade for me, for my mother and father died, and in my search for meaning, I spent 18 months in a Pentecostal church. They convinced me to burn my dresses and costumes. They said, the devil's been wearing them. Well, he does have good taste, I said. I finally escaped the clutches of the fundos and landed a role in Yahoo series' Young Einstein playing Sigmund Freud. As timing would oddly have it, I was then diagnosed with a depressive illness, which was managed for the most part with medication. Tim McKew's cabaret combo is born, marrying jazz with social political satire, lampooning the likes of Jeff Kennett with Springtime for Jeffrey in Melbourne Town, and my scathing song about Pauline Hanson. Pauline, 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 the things that you've been saying are obscene. She is a bitch from Ipswich, she sold a lot of fish and chips, you should have fallen in the oil, Pauline. She don't like black, she don't like gays, so get those Muslims out the way. And you ain't got no fashion sense, Pauline. We gigged at many festivals, including the Melbourne Festival and International Comedy Festival and Midsummer. I also donated services to many AIDS fundraising events across Australia, including Style Aid at the Grand Hyatt, for the Positive Living Centre, and performing at Kinsellas in Sydney, and singing at the closing ceremony of the AIDS ward at Fairfield Hospital. This period was a very dark and troubling period for our community and for the world. Tim's missionary position is how Rennie Ellis entitled the pictorial he penned in the Herald Sun on my escapades in China in '98. I brought queer cabaret to Shanghai, to mainland China, all under the radar, without permission from the Beijing Cultural Bureau. A truly watershed event for me, sponsored by Qantas. I arrived seeing that I'm billed as Mardi Gras comes to China. Oh, my dear. For my opening night at Shanghai's only underground gay bar, Eddie's Tree Bar, called thus, for they just built the bar around the existing plane trees. I shared my dressing room with a tree, very Wagnerian. In order to satisfy the Shanghai's gays' huge expectations, I decided to reinterpret one of their infamous icons and made my entrance dressed as the Dowager Empress of China, Si Chi, with 9-inch nails, singing My Way. And now I face the bamboo curtain. The mainly queer Chinese crowd were in transports of hysterical laughter. I also sang about Pauline Hanson, which brought the expats to tears. Si Chi tells her audience, one day you'll have your own Mardi Gras through the streets of Shanghai, which received a huge applause. I felt very humbled to be that voice of freedom from the West. The Chinese queers, both then and still now, suffer persecution for their sexuality from the authorities. The authorities were tipped off that a subversive cabaret artiste was in town, but they never knew where I was going to pop up next. Neither did I. It was quite thrilling and just a bit dangerous. I thought I was in a Harrison Ford movie. My Australian friend Ms. Lely, who organised my tour, told me I was making queer history in China, for they hadn't seen decadent political public cabaret like this since pre-Mao days. I left Shanghai just in the nick of time, for the Chinese police were looking for me, accusing me of promoting homosexuality. Oh, was I? Today's talk is based upon my autobiography, Thou Shalt Not, So I Did, which is coming out next year, so keep your eyes peeled. But I should like to conclude with my queer anthem, Once Upon a Time.
Well, boys and girls, this journey's been going on since the Big Bang, and I'm looking forward to the day when there are no categories for who we are. Gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, etc. When there are no labels except Chanel!
Thank you very much, Tim. Yes, you said you came out of your mother singing, and I hope you never stop. You've left us no time for questions. But yeah.
If you'd like to question me later, I'm very happy to be questioned. About anything. And even if it's just because I'm charming, you're most welcome to approach.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
I'm